Check, check, 1, 2.
Good evening. It is 5:30, and I will call this meeting of the Zoning Advisory Committee to order at 5:30. That is item 1.01. I want to say thank you, first of all, to the Stead Elementary School community for having us out here in the community, as well as the whole ZAC support team. I know it's not easy, so thank you. That brings us to item 1.02, roll call.
Polly Boardman. Shannon Coley, present. Melissa Cook Sanford. Kristen DeHaan.
Present.
Cami Elquist Leray.
Present.
Darren Fleck.
Present.
Ryan Henderson.
Present.
Eddie Hirschman. He's going to be late. Mia Mansfield. Adriana Publico.
Present.
Tyler Rogers.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, we have two items on the agenda this evening for our primary orders of business. Brings us to item 2.01, approval of the minutes of the October 17th, 2024 meeting of the Zoning Advisory Committee. This is an item for possible action. Are there any questions or comments on the meeting minutes before we take public comment? Do we have any public comment on the meeting notes?
No.
Very good. Can I get a motion?
Krista Dawn, for the record, I move that the Zoning Advisory Committee approve the minutes of October 17th, 2024 meeting.
And a second? Very
Adriana
good.
Publico.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from the October 17th, 2024 meeting, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion is passed. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 2.02, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding the proposed enrollment zone adjustments for the 2026-27 school year, potentially impacting the following schools: Stead Elementary School, Lemon Valley Elementary School, Silver Lake Elementary School, William O'Brien Middle School, and Cold Springs Middle School. This is an item for possible action, and I will remind folks that have joined us tonight that want to have public comment on this to please fill out the green cards, which are in the back. They're at the end of the table, and so if you'd like to make sure you have public comment, fill one of those out and give them to Shannon at the end here. So with that, this is an item for possible action, and I'll hand it over to staff from the school district.
Thank you very much. My name is Brett Rodella, the long-range planner for the school district. Tonight's presentation will be pretty straightforward, so we'll just get right into it. We visited this slide last meeting. I discluded a part on school of choice, but the reason I'm bringing this up, it's the administrative regulation on the alignment of school attendance zones, and this section addresses grandfathering of students that would be 5th graders and 8th graders of any impacted schools through this rezone process. The reason I want to kind of key in on it is I think it affects the motion that you define. The language here says realignment of school zones may be considered by the committee as part of the recommendation. That language may be, to me, indicates to me that you have to specify that grandfathering is mentioned in your motion. Legal might have a different perspective on that, but based on my interpretation on this, and if I were in your shoes, I would specify that within your motion. So, moving forward on the review of options that we looked at last week, option 2, which includes the Stead to Silver Lake section on the west side of Stead Boulevard, and then the Lemon Valley to Stead north and south sections. Option 3, which we'll revisit these again tonight, includes the Stead to Silver Lake, Lemon Valley to Stead south only. Option 4 is make no enrollment boundary changes, and then we'll get into option 6. And just to specify, per your motion last week, we eliminated options 5 and 5A. So to get into the options, 2, 3, 4, and 6, before we get quite there, I wanted to address the LV, the Lemon Valley to Stead North section, the little hatched polygon in the center of the map here. If you look at the map, and you'll see the big yellow polygons within the center of the map, those yellow polygons outline the Sky Vista subdivision. I wanted to tee this up just for further insight and context as it pertains to that Lemon Valley to Stead North section. That section does fall within the Sky Vista subdivision, and I wanted to show you the relationship of the Sky Vista subdivision relative to New Stead, the zoning recommendations, and where that section currently goes to, which is Lemon Valley Elementary. It's the only section, that LV to ST North is the only section of that subdivision that goes to Lemon Valley. So this compels me on the motion or the action to move that section to New Stead. I leave that in your hands, but I just kind of wanted to point that out, which we did not quite address in earlier meetings.
Adriana Publico for the record. Where do the rest of the students go in that subdivision?
Yeah, so you'll see the white line that's just above that little red hatch section. Those students go to Desert Heights Elementary, and we're not going to entertain or propose any changes there. However, everything south, sort of to the southwest, those students attend Stead currently, and will, with all of our options, will attend New Stead. So option 2 is the same as we've seen in previous meetings. It includes the Stead to Silver Lake and Lemon Valley to Stead North and South. Impacted students in parentheses, those are the students that would be impacted that attend the zone school, currently zoned. Here's before and after. And the enrollment projections on that. Lemon Valley Elementary is set to be reconstructed in the 2031 to 33 timeframe per the facilities modernization plan. One reason I like this option most is because it balances enrollments between Lemon Valley and New Stead about as tightly as they can be, and it sets up zoning for Lemon Valley, for the new Lemon Valley reconstruction. Just pointing that out. I think this is a pretty well balanced result, all schools considered. Most balanced. Moving on to option 3, it's very similar to the previous, with the exception to that Lemon Valley to Stead North section not being rezoned. Here's the after. And the projections for that. Not a tremendous change here, but again, that LV, the Lemon Valley to Stead North section, has that adjacency to the Sky Vista subdivision that I think carries some weight and justification for the rezone.
Brett,
Yep.
but the difference between option 2 and 3 is the ST to SL.
Yeah, the ST, no, that one's in this.
It's in the first one too? It's in
Yeah.
option 2
It's
also?
yeah,
Okay, sorry.
no problem. Well, that'll be option 6. We'll get there. Yep. Option 4 proposes no changes. And the student enrollment projections for that. And moving forward into option 6, it reflects pretty similar previous examples, with exception to the Stead to Silver Lake action. Silver Lake would not be impacted. Here's before and after.
Tyler Rogers for the record. Brett, while we're looking at option 6, the polygon to the lower right, LV to ST, I think last time we met, you mentioned, I think, discovering further development or plans to the community around that area. Can you just sort of restate what we learned last on that?
Yeah, and it has more to do with Lemon Valley Elementary School zone entirely, rather than just that section. We went back with our development consultant and came to the determination or the conclusion that we anticipate development in Lemon Valley Elementary School's entire zone to be more intense. That would fill Lemon Valley to a higher capacity. So we pushed that LV to Stead south section a little more further to the east to absorb development that's already planned. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. So I think
Okay.
what I conclude from that is there is some need for Lemon Valley relief because we know there's more
Yeah.
relief or development coming.
Per the intensity of the development, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. So here's the before on option 6 and after. Again, this includes no change to Silver Lake. And here's the student enrollment projections on that. So that about sums it up. We're looking at, again, options 2, 3, 4, and 6. Staff recommendation is 2. A big part of that is just redistributing some students that are west of Stead Boulevard into their most closely neighborhood school. I think it's friendlier from a transportation standpoint, although it will be a cost-neutral action. One thing I picked up from an associate chief last meeting was that students that attend Stead that do receive transportation to cross Stead going west, a lot of them will just walk across the street. And they've had a number of incidents with car accidents and things like kids getting hit. So I would say that, you know, to be able to minimize things like that, it adds some value, as well as just balancing enrollments to what we perceive as an optimal and logical and appropriate manner. So,
Brett, I missed that. Can you restate where the accidents were happening?
yeah, on Stead Boulevard, crossing Stead from Stead Elementary School, heading west.
I see. Okay, so that's okay. Okay. Thank
While
you.
those kids receive transportation, a lot of them apparently will just walk because it's more efficient, it takes less time for them to walk. So, and while, you know, with option 2, some students west of Stead will still continue attending Stead, it's going to minimize the number that do.
Perfect. Any other questions that the committee has of staff? This is a time for us to have a dialogue with them before we take some public comment.
Adriana Publico, which of these options have implications at the middle school level?
Options 2, 3, options 2 and 3. And anything that affects Silver Lake will affect students that currently attend O'Brien will be rezoned to Cold Springs.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's really important to call out, is that if we include the polygon to the left of moving that ST to SL, that does change the feeders. And
That's
I think
correct.
All should be aware of that. I think I've asked this a few times, but I think given we have some public involved too, I'm just sort of curious to understand from staff, though, like, this is a very different brush fire chart than we're used to seeing. This is not like a clear overcrowding situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still trying to wrap my head around the need for change, other than we have a new elementary school, of just, because I think part of our ethos also has to be minimize change to
Yeah.
the community. So I want to
Absolutely.
be crystal clear of like why.
Sure. Understood.
Do you have anything to add on that?
I guess when it comes to the FMP and optimizing our enrollment boundaries, there's a case to be made for that. In the administrative regulations, with the guidance from admin regs, as far as I assessed it, the option 2 covered it hit every point, and it was the only one of these options that did. So when it comes to a rezoning decision, that's where I would favor the impact to Silver Lake. However, there's a case to be made that impacting families carries weight. And I think receiving their comment on that is, you know, about as deep as that can get. You know, I can't give you their point of view.
And I think that was sort of my next question. And I don't know if there is some staff from any of the impacted schools here. I reached out to all of the principals at the elementary schools to see if we could engage in the PTAs. Cool. So wonderful. So if you guys can submit public comment, I would really value hearing just from you guys and impact on the community and knowing preference or sort of thoughts on these, because that's really valuable. Any other questions that the committee has? Yes, please.
Yeah, Cami LeRae for the record. So when you say that option 2, I believe, hit every point of the acronym that you just used, I assume it's a plan. Could you sort of give us a feel for like hitting every point? What points are you referencing?
Yeah, so let me pull the map up so that we can reference that. Here we go. So the first item on the guidance it's in Admin Reg 7107, is keep subdivisions small and neighborhood units in the same attendance zone to the extent possible. Second, assign students to the closest school to the extent possible. I think that's the biggest one. Third is create compact attendance zones with few or no island areas. That's addressed in option 2. Include target enrollments that allow for growth and anticipated changing demographics. That works out as Silver Lake does not have any planned residential development. I don't think there's space within their enrollment boundary to add residential units right now. Same with Stead. 5 is comply with feeder patterns to the extent possible. Adjusting your feeder for O'Brien and Cold Springs will do that if you make that shift. And then 6, avoid placing transportation burdens on diversity subgroups. And for me, looking at the map, we assessed last meeting like crow's flight distance of these zones to their proposed school. The ST to SL would set this neighborhood obviously closer to Silver Lake than it would be at Meeting-Stead.
Any other questions we have of staff before we take some public comment? Very good. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on item 2.02?
Yes, from Courtney Seago.
Hi, Courtney. Cool. Just step on right up to that mic and push the little face with curves coming out of it. And you have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name's Courtney Seago. I'm the principal, the current standing principal at Silver Lake Elementary School. My initial concern is I would like to understand where the projected numbers are coming from, because I'm currently sitting at 504 students. And we recently, this year, the Copper Mesa apartments, the ones right off of Red Rock, opened. And I have gotten over 85 students since August enrolled from the Copper Mesa apartments. So when I look at next year's projections, it's showing at 462. And I'm getting new students every day from the apartment, so I'm confused as to why the projection's even lower next school year than what we're currently sitting at. I gained 2 new allocations this year just because of the amount of students we gained from Copper Mesa. I don't know if I have 3 minutes worth of things to say, but that would be my main concern, is that we have almost 100 new kids this year just from that one apartment complex. So I'm concerned that the projections may be off, initially I was told, so the apartments were actually supposed to open last school year, and I was initially told I was only going to be gaining 8 students from the apartments, and now I'm sitting at almost 100. So that was off. So I'm concerned with the rezoning, and I'm not opposed to taking new students, so I don't want that to be heard today, because I'm always willing to take new kiddos. But the numbers seem really off to me. So how many more kids will that, going with option 2, how many more kids is that gonna add? Also considering Copper Mesa is not full yet. They did a staggered opening, and so every time they open a new section of building, I get an influx of more registrations of kids. So I just wanted that to be on the record of what's happening currently in our building.
Thank you very much.
We have public comment from Michelle Will.
Michelle Will, I'm the principal here at Stead Elementary. I think this was originally the staff recommended choice because of the railroad tracks and the students crossing the street. However, although I would love for to have less students, that means less impact for sure. I would have to say with the new zoning, I would foresee that right now we do have a bus that does go over there. So despite them being in our walking zone, because the railroad tracks are there and the busy street is there, we do have a bus that goes over there. However, we do have students who choose to walk because it is a faster choice, especially when the weather is nice. But I would say that because our new campus is further that direction, I would foresee that more of those students would be riding the bus either way. So I see that less of a concern, being that we would have the transportation for them to ride the bus, and because it is further away, they would be riding the bus. So as far as the staff consideration there, I'm not sure how much of that actually has a play, just as a consideration.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting us tonight. Do we have any other public comment?
No.
Thank you. All right, this is our chance to chat and deliberate as a committee. Does anyone want to start a discussion?
Ryan Henderson for the record. I've initially from the get-go felt no change, just looking at the numbers. I'm kind of gathering from the two principals, no change is kind of their feeling too. I was fine with option 2 if we had to change something, but I just from the get-go felt like we're just changing to change. That's kind of just a statement, I guess.
Any other expansion?
Melissa Cook for the record. If we look at option 4, and which is no change, and with what Ms. Segal just said, I would be concerned because these numbers are showing max of 532 and you're sitting at 504 currently, and those apartments are not completely open. So I think at some point we're going to end up with an overcrowded situation at Silver Lake. So some sort of change is going to be needed regardless. And then to kind of bring in our last decision is we did talk about, and one of the reasons why we went with the decision we did was we wanted to kind of take care of where the building was going to happen, so fill up the schools that were more landlocked and that we didn't have space for more building, and leave some of that room in the newer schools for that growth to happen. So I think regardless, we're going to have to make a change, whether it's this year or in the coming years, due to where there still is open space for building.
I think that last part really resonates with me too. I think when I think about like what our focuses have to be, it's around like giving relief to schools that are crowded, to also making sure that new development and new schools are being properly filled, and also to, I think, try to minimize the impact on the community. And this is a part of the district that continues to see a significant change, and these communities have already been rezoned a few times historically. And so that is certainly on my mind of trying to really be thoughtful and justify why rezoning needs to happen. And I think, if I understood your last point, like thinking about giving ourselves optionality into the future, like the primary point within these areas that's sort of attention to me is the bottom right, LV to ST, where we know that there's new development currently happening and more to come that can impact Lemon Valley. We've heard that from staff that there's more to come, and so trying to plan for the future to give Lemon Valley future relief by moving that into Stead actually makes sense to me. That's not any of the options that are currently on the table, but I'm currently of the opinion that I don't really feel like moving folks into a different middle school feeder unless there's a compelling reason, which is, I think, sort of the justification or the impact on the polygon to the left, SD to SL. The middle polygon, again, they're currently operating and functioning into the existing school, but the one that makes sense to me is actually to move the polygon to the right, and that's sort of where I'm leaning, is to sort of zero in on that change of moving that polygon out of Lemon Valley into Stead. To me, makes the most sense at the current moment.
So what you're saying is that it would be like an option 6A, that we would take off the LV, the Lemon Valley to New Stead, right? And keep Lemon Valley.
Correct.
to
Yeah,
Stead.
I think, yes, that is what I'm envisioning.
just wanted clarification.
I'm looking at the no changes on number 4, and there is, I mean, I'm assuming that these are projecting out and looking what's coming, correct, in 2033. You're looking at what's opening, and the numbers just aren't there. I understand you're concerned about what's coming, but wouldn't it show what's coming on here?
Yeah, and that's why I think that the yellow that we see in Lemon Valley is what's coming. So there's actually a forecast of yellow. Like, there's actually a forecasted impact, and we know there's more development, even more, that's coming. But yes, that should be reflected in here, which is that is the only sort of.
And is 90 bad?
Yes.
Okay.
Melissa,
Sorry, yes, 90% is a lot.
yeah, and Melissa, for the record, like, we just heard that although, things are projected, it clearly hasn't been projected, and I'm not sure about, as also an admin representative on this committee, I can also say that we are dealing with a lot of families in our Title I type populations, and it's very similar in my area that it is out here, in that several families are doubling up in these apartments. So 8 would be based on a 1-family apartment, maybe, to 1 to 2 kids. We're sitting, I have a family today. I have 3 families living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And so I imagine that that's where some of that exact same numbers are coming from, and I know that that's hard for Brett to be able to project, but that is the reality of what we're facing in the economy about what's going on in the Reno-Sparks area and how the schools in our lower socioeconomic areas are feeling this impact. And so I think that although he's done a phenomenal job, what we can project and what reality is are 2 totally different things. And so I think that we have to think about that. And just another comment, like moving forward, looking at the middle school perspective, regardless, the numbers don't change a ton at the middle school level. It still shows that Cold Springs Middle School is just barely above 50% for years. So, and again, that's where there is more room to build, and we might in the future see more building out there, which would give us the opportunity to fill up more out there in the future.
So, Shannon Coley for the record. So looking at STED is at 96% right now, and the new STED will be down to 72. Am I right?
Depends on which option are you looking at?
Yeah, 3.
Option 3.
72. 74.
Yeah, that's represented.
72, 74, okay.
Are there other thoughts from?
Just another idea to put out there for when schools are not at full capacity, that gives us the opportunity to be able to have special programs, to be able to offer things that sometimes we can't offer when our buildings are completely packed because we need the classroom space. We can bring in other agencies like, let's say, a Boys and Girls Club, and they can have an on-site room. We can do some of those things for our community when our schools aren't completely packed. So knowing the needs of the community, I would say I would be in favor of a school not being at 90% or above capacity, because that really limits us from being able to bring in other things into our schools that also help our communities.
Darren Fleck for the record, and having not been part of this discussion, I'd just like to add some background. We've had schools open up and be under 90% and have trailers added within the first 2 years. And that goes to design issues with new buildings that have less closable space, more open space. They're beautiful buildings, but you can't close off these hub rooms and everything like that. On top of that, it depends on the buildings and the administrators, how many special programs you have. You may say you're at 77%, but if you have a GT program, strategies, CLS, and I think there's 3 more that I could throw in there. You're now talking about a smaller group of kids taking up a room, and all of a sudden, especially in an elementary school in a high needs area, especially a title area, that 77% takes up a whole lot of the building, and that needs to be considered when you're looking at STED. And then the older buildings, they may have the mobiles and stuff, but they're going to be tighter with smaller classrooms, and I just think we have to keep that in mind where we've seen new schools be packed, like Melissa said, and then all of a sudden we're rezoning again within a couple of years.
Adriana Publico for the record. Initially, I was leaning towards making a change or recommendation or voting for a recommendation to change something tonight, but based on what I've heard from many people about the unpredictability of demographics given the economy right now, and the fact that if we do make a recommendation and it goes to change, we kind of tie our own hands for about 4 or 5 years in order to prevent rezoning the same kid twice. I think it might make more sense to wait a year or 2 and see if some of this volatility clears up, and a more compelling reason to move kids and inconvenience families appears. Because I thought there was enough of a compelling argument, but now I'm not so sure.
Is anyone feeling a strong, compelling need to change that we should chat about?
I don't know if it's a strong, compelling, but I know charter schools was probably part of the prediction or the projections on this because they were taking a lot of students. The families 2, 3 to an apartment is skewing the numbers. I don't still see a problem waiting 2 or 3 years to kind of see how these numbers shake out with the charter school and economy and whatnot. I'm just struggling with the change to just make a change because the numbers I'm seeing here just aren't much in the orange or the red. And I know yellow's not great, but we're on the really low side of yellow, pretty much in the white. Again, just kind of my opinion.
Yeah, I think Tyler Rogers for the record, I think Adriana's point to me resonates too, is like, give ourselves optionality. And if there isn't an immediate need, we could be back here in a year or 2 once STED is opening, and we can have a better sense of the development. That resonates with me.
Cami LaRae for the record. I'm looking at the Lemon Valley numbers specifically with the high level in the 80s and popping into the 90s very soon. That's my only concern with holding on and making a decision, and especially with any type of growth that might happen. It seems to me that that's a population that we're putting a lot of stress on by not considering action sooner than later. I guess the balance is when's the right time to, as far as a sense of urgency, when have we tipped past that bell curve? That's what I'd like to try to have my hands around before I shove off a decision.
I see your point, Cami, but if I'm looking at it correctly, then we're not in the yellow until 2029 in Lemon Valley. And if today, in November of 2024, we're talking about changes that would go into effect in fall of 2026, then I think we have a few years to see what that looks like, if these projections are truly accurate, if they're better or worse in any way, and make a more informed decision at that point.
Kristen DeHaan for the record. And I believe, Brett, you said the 2030, 2031 is when they would be doing the FMP for a new Lemon Valley. So that would probably take that into account.
I mean, I think at the start of the conversation, I sort of shared the sentiment about trying to get ahead of Lemon Valley's relief, but I think this is, I'd be curious to hear from other members that have been on longer, but when we've looked at these brush fire charts, typically they're like dark red, and they're like immediate action is needed, which is why we take action. So to me, that's always been different with this one. It's just not as clear of a pressing need that school is facing at the current moment.
Kristen Don for the record, and also often when there are those brush fire, we have lots of family members giving lots of input, and I do recognize that it's hard for families sometimes at this time of day, but we really haven't heard on public comment via email or in person anybody saying we need to have this.
I think that's a really important point too. I'm feeling some sense of consensus that there is no action. We don't need to take an action to not have action. So unless there is anyone else that feels differently or wants to make a motion in a different way, I think we can close out this agenda item.
I just kind of wanted to point out on all of what is currently projected, it actually puts Silver Lake almost at that 90% with the current projections, not including what Ms. Segal did bring to our attention, reaching that 90% like by next year. She's at 89% no matter what option we go with. And so I think that's something to consider. So maybe it's not even the Lemon Valley that we're concerned about in 4 or 5 years from now. Maybe it is Silver Lake by next school year that we're concerned. So I would maybe put it to the committee that this is something that we hold off for now, and then we look at it again next school year at this time, because I think we are at some point going to have to make a decision closer than 4 to 5 years, but because we'll have a better idea about what this looks like once those apartments are full, once maybe things calm down a little bit, with the economy and whatnot in the area and the growth, and what other new projections, what the charter schools are going to take out, because isn't one of them supposed to open this next fall? 26, 27. So, but they would have started their enrollment process already. So we'll kind of have I think probably a better idea with some more information, and knowledge is power.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And with the county's sort of, I don't know, calling it a variance process, but a new optionality of going to different schools. Like, there could be a lot of folks that select to go to the new elementary or Meeting-Stead that we don't really know how that will play out. So I also think giving ourselves optionality in the future is spot on. So I'm not seeing any action or a motion on the floor. So I think with that, we can just close this agenda item. Thank you for the deliberation. What's that? No action for no action, yeah. Okay, that brings us to, through our primary business for the evening, which brings us to agenda item 3.01, general public comment.
Do we need to make an official recommendation?
I don't think we.
So for the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer, you have options in front of you, and one of them is to not change anything. And so that is the option, and you need to make that recommendation and do it that way so that we close that out.
Okay, so you actually want us to pass a motion for
Yeah, I actually need you to
number 4?
Pass. Yes.
Okay, cool. Very good.
Are we able to, Melissa Cook for the record, are we able to, within this motion, say this is what we're recommending at this current time, but we would like to readdress this next year?
That is something that we would deal with the chair and the vice chair, because that's when we do the agendas. And as you guys, as members, can advise your chair and vice chair of what you'd like to see.
So I think, I don't know if there's harm in amending the motion for that. Is that a problem if that's part of it?
Yeah, you can absolutely put that we would look at that at a future time. Do realize that with the FMP coming up, you're going to be looking at a lot of schools and rezoning. So think about how many you want to talk about at a time.
We'll get super efficient. We'll just crank through this next time.
And that doesn't mean you can't, right? We've done 2 at a time in that, but
yeah.
It's going to start coming quicker and quicker.
Good warning. We look forward to it. Great. So then with that, is there a motion on the floor?
Yes, Melissa Cook, for the record, I would like to motion that we go with option 4 to make no enrollment boundary changes for the upcoming school year and revisit an amendment to that option would be that we revisit this come next school year.
Ryan Henderson, for the record, I second that.
That seems fine. I don't know if we can be specific about when. I think if it's a recommendation, that's probably fine.
So no changes for the 24-25 school year? No. 25-26 school year, and we would address this zoning option again
At a future date.
at a future date in the fall of 20,
Just in a future, can we just future date?
future date. There we go.
Great.
Because we had a second, do we?
Yeah, so that I need a second on the amended.
We had a second before, yeah.
Ryan Henderson, I second that motion.
Is everyone clear on the emotion, the revised one that has been put out? We're all clear? No, it's good. We don't have the lawyers here, so Tammy's us keeping it in order. We have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Very good. Thank you, Tammy, for being clear that we needed to get that done. That brings us to agenda item 3.01, general public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
No.
Very good. That brings us to agenda item 3.02, the announcement of our next meeting. We will be meeting on January 16th, 2025. So we will see you in the new year. Happy holidays to all. And that brings us to agenda item 3.03, adjourning the meeting. Thank you.